Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Christopher Nolan Retrospective. Today we are talking about Memento, his second movie. I'm your host, Dylan Musk, and I'm joined by your friendly neighborhood caster, Kirkland Patzer,
Ayo,
and the play-by-play, Tyler Briggs.
that's me.
Welcome back. We just crushed Following, to a little peek behind the curtains. We recorded that 5 minutes ago, so we're right back in it. I'm excited to talk about this one, Memento. As I said in that first episode, if you haven't checked that out rather. Following is Nolan's first movie that is kind of unknown. I'd say for most part, people don't really know what it is. So definitely check it out. Go back, listen to our episode, and then you can come check this one out. But I'm excited for this because this is, as I said in that episode, the first Nolan movie that I had watched. But I think we're ready to jump right into it because this episode's coming out like probably a week and a half, 2 weeks from when we're recording it. So I have no idea what's on the feeds. Just check them out. Check out the socials, all that stuff. So let's jump right into it. Memento is a really fun movie. Here's the synopsis for you guys quickly. Leonard Shelby is tracking down the man who raped and murdered his wife. The difficulty of locating his wife's killer, however, is compounded by the fact that he suffers from a rare, untreatable form of short-term memory loss. Although he can recall details of life before his accident, Leonard cannot remember what happened 15 minutes ago, where he's going, or why. I didn't like the IMDb synopsis, so I found a better...
I was just gonna say I'm reading it right now. It's so similar to the one for Following. It's literally one sentence. I don't know.
And I felt like for Following, one sentence was fine, right? It's like a simple movie, but I feel like
it's only an hour long.
I feel like Memento deserves a bit more. But yeah, this is a great movie that I'm really excited to talk about. I don't think, have either of you guys seen this movie before watching it for this cast?
Yes, I have. However, it was probably like 5 months ago. Like honestly, like it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that fresh in my memory, so I wanted to just give it a quick rewatch for the cast. But yeah,
Briggs,
I definitely did not.
So Briggs, from the fresh perspective, you just watched it today or yesterday or something like that?
I literally just watched it before the cast.
That's why you had to be ready for 8:10 instead of 7:30.
That was exactly it.
I also just rewatched it right before the cast.
Well, to be fair, I was watching it while I was playing Papers, Please. So because
it's a pretty lo-fi game, right?
It was a very lo-fi game, and
hopefully, actual border agents aren't playing games while they're passing documents, letting people go through. Briggs, you have the fresh perspective. What did you think of this movie? Is this a movie that's worthy to go back to if you're a Nolan fan today but haven't seen his older films?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a lot of it is what I said with the Following, or just Following.
Just Following.
Just
Not the
Following.
Ethan film.
A recurring theme on this.
Solely Following. Is that I think it is a very good statement to Nolan's film making abilities, and I think it really shows. It kind of takes what Following did and then just added a bit more of a budget to it and expanded on what Christopher Nolan is capable of. And I really think it's again he messes with linearity of the story, and he really keeps you hooked on with these really small tiny details throughout the whole film, and along with Following and this one, they're both films where I'd be interested in watching a recutting of the film just chronologically as a second watch through.
I have
just
a fun fact about that in
how things play out.
We'll get to it later.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, it's a really good film, and it just it kind of just ups the stakes, I guess, from Following, and but it follows a similar idea of just that non-linear storytelling. As you're kind of figuring out the plot in a weird order that keeps you hooked on the kind of initial premise.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, like I said, this was my second watch through. The first time I watched it, the reason why I wanted to rewatch it was because I wanted to have it fresh in my mind. You know, this is for the Patreon, so I want to do my due diligence for them. But B, I honestly didn't really care for this the first go around. Perhaps it's just because it's came out in 2000s, maybe sort of a dated film. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like I'm not the biggest like Guy Pearce fan as well. So him as the main role, I don't know, not the biggest fan of him. And
Sure.
just for whatever reason, I didn't really like it too much. However, if you had watched our previous episode on Following, I stated like I wasn't too into the film at the beginning. However, as the film progressed, I really got into it, and I felt like the first time I watched it, I didn't really get that effect. Whereas this time around, I was just getting more and more into it. Even though I did know what's going to happen at the end, I was still just like, I found as the film went on, it was just, it felt like the action, not necessarily action, just the pacing of the film was more captivating for me personally. And so I definitely had a good go around with it this time. There's still quite a few things I have problems with that doesn't make it like one of my favorite Nolan movies, but I think I would recommend it to, again, anyone that's a fan of Nolan or just someone that wants kind of a trippy, non-linear movie, which funny enough, it's most of Nolan's movies, but yeah, I think I'd recommend it to most people.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. As I said in the first episode, this is the first Nolan movie that I had ever seen. I watched it in high school for some high school class. Can't remember what class
Probably
it was.
Psychology. It would be my assumption, since it has
like
like a brain damage, you know.
Unless it was just like the teacher was feeling really lazy, or there's a sub, and he's like, I don't know, I like this movie. You guys want to watch?
Like a math sub, he wheels in that TV. All right, kids, this is what we're gonna watch it.
Yeah, so I don't know how long ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago, would have been the first time I watched it, and then I think I watched it pretty soon thereafter because I really liked it. I found it really interesting, but obviously I was super confused for a lot of it. So when I watched it again, knowing what's actually going on, it made a lot more sense. And so I think watching it today was either my third or fourth time watching it. It has been a long time since I have watched it again, because I think it was on Netflix for a while and then they removed it at some point, and then I just kind of never sought it out. Kirkland, is this on Netflix right now? I don't think so, right?
No, it is. Well, I mean, I didn't check, but
you went to the alleyway.
I went to the alleyway. You know, Nitro. He's got my movies.
Nitro. Yeah. So I love this movie. I think I just gained an even more appreciation for it today because obviously in the last like 4 or 5 years, watching all these movies for podcasts, paying attention to directors, paying attention to more things about movies. I think I just have like a higher threshold of like things I'll notice in movies, things I appreciate. And watching it again now was like, man, there's so much. Like, this is just such an expertly crafted movie. Even if some of it is kind of dull at times, I think it's just something that, like, the concept is great, and I'm sure a lot of people would love to try this concept out, but to actually make it work and be compelling and something that's like really satisfying on multiple rewatches, and isn't like, it is confusing, but it ties it so well together at the end of the movie that I just think it's really kind of worthy of praise. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go back and watch it, because even listening, you know, when we get into spoilers here in a second, like, it really takes away from the movie if you know what to look out for. Like, you'd really just have to kind of go in blind, I think, to fully get the experience of it. Because, like I said, that's how I experienced it the first time, and then I immediately wanted to watch it again, like, I don't know, a couple weeks later, because I knew that there was a lot to gain there right away. And I feel like most movies I watch it, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll watch that when it hits Netflix. But with this one, it's like, man, I gotta watch this again right now. Like, I need to experience this movie again right away. So I personally think it's a great movie. I don't know where I'd rank it in terms of my like overall movie list. I haven't really made one of those, so I don't know where it would go. But I think watching it again for the first time in a few years, it definitely stands up and stands the test of time, and I think is absolutely worthy of going back to. So there is my overall. Let's jump right into it. Do you guys want to go right into spoilers right away? You know, Dan, I think we should just jump right into spoilers. This is an old movie.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's just do it. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, spoilers. If you haven't watched it, please go back and watch it before listening to the rest of this. But here's
the film technically spoils itself right at the start.
Yeah, it does and it doesn't, right? I mean,
but that's not the point.
Yeah, I know. It's so hard. It's kind of like hard to conceptualize in a way.
It's one of those films that you can't really spoil, because even if you know what happens, it's just the experience of going through all the steps.
But I don't know. I feel like there is so many plot points that even if they're chronologically the end of the movie, like, they still get revealed to you like at a different point. So if let's say if you haven't watched this movie in a while, or if you are, God forbid, watching this, even though you haven't watched the movie yourself. Essentially, the way it works is there's kind of like two like the movie alternates between black and white scenes and then scenes in color. The scenes in color are the end of the movie going backwards, scene by scene. So like the end of every scene is like the first part of what you watched previously, and then the black and white scenes are the movie happening like chronologically, and then it just alternates between those until like kind of the end of the movie when it kind of blends together and kind of joins into one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just so crazy how like the pacing of this and how much of it has to fit together. I can't imagine what the editing would have been like for this movie when it's been so difficult. But also maybe he just had it all planned out, right? And he just knew exactly how everything was going to fit. Obviously he did to some degree, but yeah, just wow, what an exceptional movie. Like I can't really think of another movie that is quite like this one. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
I don't have a deep memory bank, so
one thing that this movie strikes a lot of parallels to is a really good book that I'm a big fan of, and I think it's widely praised in the sci-fi community.
What's it called?
Now I kind of don't want to spoil it because for people who haven't read it,
they wouldn't realize.
Part of the experience is
realizing
at the end that it's like
non-linear or something.
It's non-linear because it's not evident that it's non-linear at the start.
So go read all sci-fi books and
I think if you know which sci-fi book I'm talking about, then
then you know.
If you
there's
don't,
a few people who are tipping their cap to you, Briggs. They're like, "Oh, I know what this guy's talking about."
It is what it is. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and say it anyways, but I'll just put a little spoiler warning in front.
We're in spoilers now. Just go. Or the book you're talking about at this point?
Yeah, the book is going to be spoiled here. So just skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to be spoiled on a good book. But the book is Ian Banks's Use of Weapons, where it's basically, I'm not going to get into it, but it basically does the same thing where you have this initial concept of a character and who they are. And then you're following this character through these events in their lives that are sort of, each chapter is separated, and it kind of foreshadows in it in that it tells you like the chapter by the chapter numbers, but it's done all in numerals, so it's not quite as evident.
Okay.
But yeah, it just kind of goes forward in each alternating chapter. One is going backward in time, one's going forward in time. And then it's at the end, there's like near the end, you kind of start realizing the linearity of it. And then at the end, there's just the big character reveal, and that this person you've been following is not the person you think they are. And it kind of comes like the facade per se all comes crashing down.
Crazy.
But really good. And this is, it's not something I've really seen very often. I think this is the only other thing that I can really compare that like equivalent to. I would say Following is still a similar non-linear kind of concept, but I would say to the degree of execution, I would say that this film and that book are probably two that have executed it very well and kind of done it in this particular way. So hats off to both things.
Yeah, this is much more of a technical achievement than many other movies, just in terms of actually getting it to work and making it a movie that you can watch in 2 hours and digest it all. And even then, like, there is still a lot of confusion, or when you rewatch it, right, there's things you can be looking out for. But Kirkland, so you watched this a few months ago, weren't a big fan. You watch it again now, you like it more, but maybe you're not like in love with it. What do you think why do you think you enjoyed it more this time?
Well, I think I was just a little bit more aware of kind of what was going on, like the usages of the black and white scenes as opposed to color scenes. Like, I feel like the first time I watched it, I didn't even realize that was even happening. It was just like, oh, crappy quality that Nitro gave me, so now I got some
classic Nitro,
got some black and white, like,
he's known for the occasional questionable
absolutely, he's
renowned,
very, very unreliable sometimes, but this go around I felt like I was just a little bit more aware of stuff like that was happening, and I probably just got over some of the things that like really bugged me. Like something that still kind of bugs me, but it bugged me less, was just the usages of the tattoos. And I'm not saying, like, obviously that was a big part of the film, but like just the way some of them were done, it just seemed really out of place for me and like just really cheesy. And again, it's just my personal taste for whatever reason. Maybe it was just because it was on Guy Pearce. I'm not the biggest Guy Pearce fan.
Sure.
Just certain scenes I didn't really care for. I think it was when he was doing his little like monologue type scenes, where it might have been when he was on the phone, like just telling a story. I don't know. For whatever reason, I just wasn't like jiving with it. But definitely this go around, I just appreciated the film for what it was a lot more. I think like a lot of character performances were great. I'm not the biggest Guy Pearce fan, but I still think he sold a lot of scenes really well. Trinity, I forget her name. I loved her character.
Natalie.
She was kind of all over the place.
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yeah, Carrie-Anne Moss. There you go. I thought she was
Natalie's
great.
the character name.
Yeah. Okay. Teddy, I thought he was really good. Like a lot of the characters that were just interacting with Guy, I really enjoyed it because, like, and like the way that the film's done, like you're finding things out in a similar way that like Leonard would find them out, right? Like it's very staggered. Like when you meet these characters for the first time, it's like, oh, this guy's probably just my buddy, you know, like they're coming off very kind and how a buddy would be, but then later on when they're just completely fucking him over and like it's being revealed because of they're having that time splicing, right, of non-linear storytelling. And like I feel like just overall I just enjoyed it a lot more this go around. And you know, maybe it's one of those films that the more and more I watch it, I just grow to appreciate it, because that's definitely happened with me in the past. And but no, I like I said, I don't want to recommend it again because I already did that, but it's just I don't know.
To touch on what you're saying there, of maybe you felt like some of this stuff was a bit cheesy, or like the tattoos and stuff. And I definitely see where you're coming from, but I think it's really important that they have the tattoos and they have the like the photographs of the notes that he has, because I feel like this movie could really be bogged down with little things of him like for like not knowing certain details, or even just the idea that he has to repeat some characters multiple times, that, hey, I have this condition and I can't remember anything. Like I think of like 50 First Dates, which is like a comedy that uses this kind of memory concept, or that's just like used for comedy, and that could be the case here. And it even is a couple of times, a little bit like not really ha-ha funny, but almost like a little lighthearted almost. But it is, I think, really important in terms of like, I don't know, giving the movie a little bit of, you know, to use the almost the title of the movie, a little bit of momentum to keep it going and chugging along. And I think that also just adds like a good amount of mystery to it. And even the fact that you have these things on him that are like really interpretive too, right? And we don't understand what these tattoos mean, right? Because it's not like Taylor Field with his Jurassic Park box office numbers on his back. Like it's just like a little line or something, right? And then he also has like this system, and I think it's interesting how he, at the start of the movie, which is maybe the end of the movie, but like he's talking about the system that he has, where like, okay, you gotta have a jacket with a lot of coats because you have different pockets for like different things. And like even he would write stuff on a note, and then he might cross something out. But then if something's like, if he knows something to be true, he would write it down to be something that he would get a tattoo of. And I think that's really interesting, the way that he kind of has this system, yet this system is totally broken. And obviously when it comes down to the end of the movie, he like uses his own system against himself in a way.
I think that's really neat. And it kind of goes like, you realize like how many of the things that he's done he did genuinely in good faith, and where did he intentionally mix things up so that he could live with himself.
Totally. Just touching upon quickly, like just the aspect of the tattoos, and it is like a main center point for this film. Like it's pretty much how he lives his day to day, is using the messages he's written on himself or the photos he's taken. Like that's literally how he lives his life. So it is a huge main aspect of the film. And I feel like maybe what just turned me off from it originally was I hadn't watched this film like when it was new, or like I had already heard about it before I watched it. So I feel like I just heard it's like, oh, this guy doesn't have his memory and then he writes tattoos on himself. And I'm like, oh, okay, well that's like, it's kind of lame. Like what? like, you know, just on surface face value, I wasn't sold on that aspect. So I was going in with those predetermined, you know, like uncertainties on how I'd feel in the film. So I feel like that might have had a big effect on it. And this did come out in 2000. Like it's not always the easiest to watch a movie that's 20 years old or even more. Like for, I don't know, again, I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, I wasn't the biggest fan of it the first
I
time
definitely
around.
think there's probably a time in my life where I wouldn't appreciate this movie as much as I do now. But as someone who's gotten more and more involved in film and cinema through the podcast, I would say this movie holds up very well for how old it is. But that's obviously saying that now. I think younger me would have, I don't know. I don't know if younger me would have been interested.
To side with Kirkland here, as much as I do love this movie, I do think a lot of it, as I touched on a bit earlier, is quite dry. And a lot of those black and white scenes are really not that interesting at first. It only becomes, to me, like more captivating later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Not even when you know what's going on, because obviously this time going in, I couldn't remember which scenes, like, I couldn't remember if it was the color scenes or the black and white scenes that were going forward or back, but obviously you figure that out in like a minute if you've seen this movie before. But I think some of those scenes, the black and white scenes, are a little bit boring early on, and then later on they become a lot more interesting, because I also think it's interesting just like how sporadic he becomes. Obviously, like it's just, I'm sure the longer you have this head trauma, this disease, like you probably just start going a lot more crazy. And obviously you look at when he goes to Natalie's house and he like takes out his paperwork and he says like, oh, this is all my notes here. Like there's no way he can understand all of that in his time frame before his like mind gets wiped again, right? So it's like he can't keep everything intact. And even, it gets to a point where he's doing tattoos on himself, whereas before he would just like tattoo shop or something. So I really like that chaotic nature, but that's where I think I totally see your point where like maybe the first half of this movie isn't as captivating, but once you're like really into it, once you're really invested, it becomes a lot more I don't know, a lot more engrossing.
No, exactly. And that's what I was saying. Like the longer the film was going on, the more I was getting into it. So
and I don't know if it was just my perception of it, but it felt like as like the longer as the film kept building more and more towards the climax, the period of time that you followed him before you did like a leap, I guess, a time leap further back, was shorter. Like it felt like those scenes went by quicker, and everything, like you had a quicker scene, like from when he starts the scene to when he finishes the scene, to the gray part, and then to the next scene where you get him from like kind of resetting and then going towards the end of, or going towards the beginning of the last color scene. It felt like that started progressing quicker and quicker, and like, the sequence of scenes kept going faster and faster, whereas the beginning of the film, it felt like there was more and more time in between those cuts.
Yeah, well, they were early on in the film, they're much more disconnected, obviously, just because it kind of reaches a boiling point. And obviously you have, I love the moment when it transitions, when the black and white turns into the color scene. I think that's just fantastic. It's such a great moment, but that's obviously, I think, also tied into like the pacing of the movie, where things are like really, really coming together at that point, and then they actually gel into one. And now there's no longer like two timelines, quote unquote, but it's just one consistent thing. So I think that's like, I think as much as I love it, I do agree that there maybe some points where it doesn't work, and even like sometimes it feels like there's a little inconsistency in terms of his memory, and it's hard to blame him too much for that, because if you were like consistently saying, okay, he only has 5 minutes and then it resets, I don't know. I don't know if that could be as interestingly done, but sometimes like I feel like the ending moment where he's having this big revelation is like, that's like by far the longest time he's like kept one instance of memory, and it seems almost a bit jarring, because it's like, oh wait, this is different than the rest of the movie I've been watching at this point. I don't know. Did you guys feel that same way, or is that just me?
No, for sure.
I don't think anything was really super jarring, but there was definitely, it wasn't consistent the whole way through. For when he cuts, and
well, it seems like even
it's hard to say whether that was intentional or not. But
well, it seems to me like
example,
Natalie, I don't know if I'm reading into this too much. It seems like Natalie like kind of understood it a bit more. Like she specifically slams a door and then it like seems to reset him and then she like walks in right away. And I wonder if that was intentional, where like just a loud crash or a loud bang or something is kind of reminiscent of when he smashed his face on the glass when he originally lost his memory. And that's what like almost reset the process if it doesn't naturally happen at like a 15-minute timer. And maybe that was just for pacing for that particular scene. But to me, I feel like that made sense, at least, even if that was like a short period of time.
He asked the escort to like slam the door
Right.
to like reset him. I think it's more so. I think she understood that would do something to him, but I think it's more so just like something sudden and unexpected happening that like distracts you even just for a moment. And then he just loses it and he resets. But yeah, I also like with Natalie, it feels like that one like 15-20 minute span of her like going out to Ricard to wait for him to reset and come back in and stuff. There's like a very short time that he like before he loses focus, but then you have much longer periods that are clearly I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes even of him like kind of keeping it together in a way.
Well, he's pretty frazzled in that scene too. He's like frantically looking for the pen.
I think that probably does have something to do with it as well.
I think so too. At least like, and who knows if that's like scientifically accurate. I'm sure this movie is not, but it still like feels like pretty internally consistent, which is kind of the important thing there. But I love that sequence of the movie where he's at Natalie's house. And then there's that one part where she's just like screaming at him, really reaming him out, being a total dickhead, because she knows there's like not going to be any consequences. And she gets hit, but then she immediately, like she probably wanted that, right? She immediately uses that to her advantage.
Totally. Yeah.
I thought that scene was like really gripping because like, wow, this guy's really just being used. Even he's not the best guy either by any means, but oh man, that just like it kind of hurt, you know?
Oh yeah, like straight to his face too. Like just being raw, and like knowing that there's no consequences. It's just it's a bad time not to have a pen.
And then you even know that the next, like one of the previous scenes was like, you know, they hooked up that night, right?
Yeah,
so it's
right,
like,
right.
She just immediately kind of turns on him and is really abusing him. Obviously at the bar too, she's kind of being pretty savage to him. So.
Yeah. My question is, I'm actually a little bit confused now.
Okay.
Because who is Dodd? Well, because Dodd's real name isn't Jimmy Grant, because Jimmy Grant was her boyfriend that he murdered.
Is the name Grant, I that was the guy with the gun, right? The guy with the gun is Dodd.
Yeah,
like
the black shirt that was chasing him.
Yeah,
it has to be. Yeah.
So why did she need? I don't know. I think there's probably something in the film where she alludes to it, but
yeah, I was gonna say like
that
so Jimmy Grant was her boyfriend, and then Dodd was just like another one of the crooks that was kind of working with them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have just kind of taken it like they were working together. Jimmy Grant kind of goes missing or just disappeared, so then Dodd's just kind of investigating.
I think Dodd is a different drug dealer who she thought was associated with Teddy. Is probably it.
Oh,
but there's like a weird moment where one scene she says like she mentioned something to do with Jimmy, but then it feels like she just switches Jimmy's name with Dodd so that he doesn't correlate with the John G for some reason. I don't know. Anyways, I'd have to rewatch it, even though I literally just watched it. But there's some weird thing.
I mean, I think I've gained new information every time I've watched this because it is.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot to unpack in the film.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. I really like that scene as well. It's almost like a little comedic beat when he's in that gunfight with that guy, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm chasing this guy," and he's like, "Oh, never mind, he's after me," and then he like pieces out the other way. I thought that was pretty good. What do you guys think of Teddy? Because Teddy is like, for the first half of the movie, well, really the whole movie, he's like this big mystery, right? Because the first scene in the movie is him getting killed, but you don't know who he is, and you really don't find that out until the very, very end of the movie in terms of runtime, not chronologically. But I thought,
and even then at the end, like it's very like up in the air until like the very last moments of the film.
Yeah.
I thought that character was really well in that. I think it was almost like too blatant of a red herring.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I'd agree with that.
yet at the end he kind of is a red herring to the actual problem, that like he's a red herring because what Leonard. He's a red herring because Leonard actually makes him into a red herring
Well,
from his
all
own
of his
perspective.
facts are pretty much pointing towards him, right? Like, and it's very blatant for the viewer from the very start. So
yeah, exactly. Like from the very start, we see him as a red herring. Like he seems like it's too good to be true for him to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
That he's actually after, but yet we're still like convinced that he is the bad guy. But that's all, and that's from our perspective, but it's also from the manufactured perspective that Leonard makes for himself, which is really weird. And it's really neat how it does come full circle.
I think it's almost like from like just a movie watching experience where it can't be that simple, right? Like from a viewer, you're not thinking that it can't just be that easy, right? Like, oh, that was the guy, then it's just about how he found him. But then, well, I don't know, where's the interest in the movie? Like there has to be something more to it. So
but it does keep you hooked. It is more simple than that, and also that simple at the same time.
Yeah, well, even a lot of the details at the end, to me, I'd kind of forgotten the specifics, right? Because this movie is kind of complicated. It's hard to piece together, very difficult to piece together. And I just it's hit me again today, like that the twists at the end I think are really pungent, right? Because it's such a strong sentiment for that character that he's already gone down this path before. He's already done it. He's already like quote unquote succeeded. But yet he's still like is missing so many of the facts, and like everyone is like gaslighting him and using him for their own like selfish gain and trying to peg stuff on him, almost a little bit like Following, right? Like they're kind of interesting. There's like a couple of similarities between this and his first movie, but
yeah, definitely. I think for me the most kind of compelling part of the climax and just the film as a whole was as he like learning when and why he wrote down like those instructions and those notes on the photographs. I think the photographs were kind of alluded to being like the most important ones. At least they were the most used through the story. So, and those were like the most integral kind of notes, almost like the ones that were referenced the most, at least. So it was really cool near the end, like writing down like I think for me it was like the biggest one was definitely do not believe his lies on Teddy. And they did a really good job, like just like driving it in that amongst as the movie kind of unraveled, that was the one consistent thing throughout it was do not believe Teddy. And anytime like he went to write a new note or something, that note was always there. There was always something that like that was the one consistent thing. And then as everything kind of unraveled towards that, but also little things like when he like scratches off "do not trust her," because before you just see that there's something scratched off and you don't know what it is. And just that whole situation of just like slowly figuring out when he wrote the notes and why he wrote them was very very fun.
Yeah, I agree with you completely with everything you said there, and just like the significance of the don't trust his lies, like in relation to Teddy, because like he crossed off don't trust basically the exact same thing for what was her name, Natalie, right? And like that seriously impacts a lot of his decisions throughout the film. Like he's really relying on Natalie a lot of the time, as just totally pegging pretty much everything on Teddy. Like all of his facts that are tattooed on his body are are pretty much pointing at Teddy, like his license plate number, all these things. And it's because of that one moment when Teddy's like, write this down, like don't trust her, blah, blah, blah. And then he writes it down, crosses it off. And the other thing you said, Briggs, was like the crossed off note that he had. And at the start of the film, like we don't even like, we just think maybe he misspelled something and he crossed it off. Like we don't know the significance of what that is. And I really, really like the usages of just the messages on the photos and the like. And even just like the tattoos on his body, how like there'd be scenes that there'd be no tattoo there, but we know that there's either going to be a tattoo there because he's leaving notes to, you know, shave the leg, or like just the way there'd be messages, and then later on in the film there wouldn't be there or something. Like I just loved all the usages of the messages, whether they be on the photos or on him. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of just the look of the tattoos on him, but that's my own little personal taste.
Yeah, I think it ties really interestingly into his whole system as well, because like it seems like his, you know, tattooing something on his body is reserved for just like concise information that he like knows as like an absolute truth, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But the photos are really important because obviously that's a way for him to like visually see something. So like for him to understand who Natalie is or Teddy is, he needs a picture of them, obviously. And that's why I think it's interesting that he's always requesting to see everyone in person that he talks to, so that he has the opportunity to take a picture of them, that he can write their name down and know who they are in the future. And then it's cool too that you see like some of these other important photos, because he takes photos of like other people, or I guess like when there's been some big accomplishment that he wants proof of. So when he killed the other guy, he had like a photo of himself like doing the thumbs up or whatever, covered in blood, and then I can't remember the guy. Was it Jimmy? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Jimmy, right? A picture of that guy. But then he gets rid of a couple of those photos as well, which are obviously his kind of his only absolute truths. Because anything that's written, I guess he just comment on the fact that he has like, he's really familiar with his own writing and stuff. And something that I saw when I was looking through some of the trivia that I thought was interesting is when he does write that note about Natalie that's like, don't trust her, he writes it in like cursive writing. Whereas everyone else writes in like block letters or whatever you'd call that, which is cool. So that like even if he didn't have the opportunity to scratch it out before he forgot, he would know. I'm guessing in his mind that if he wrote it in cursive, that would be a clue that that's not something that he could trust. He just had to write it down because he was like forced to or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good points.
Yeah, so
I found on foreshadowing as well. One I found some really clever scenes was when he was at Natalie's house, in the one before he so it's the one where it's before he hits her, or it's after he's hit her technically.
Chronologically,
but before the scene where he hits her, she comes into the house, and then she takes all the pens away, which is a nice little thing. Like you see her go and like take all the pens away, and then you also see right before that scene ends, you see like Leonard kind of like realize like his knuckles are sore and they're like red. And then you kind of put together, wait a minute, did he hit her? And then the next scene they have is her like freaking out at him. And then as it's kind of like all you're piecing that one together, and it's kind of great. I just thought that was a really good moment. And then once that scene happened, I was like, okay, things are starting to unravel now. But it throughout like the last 30 minutes, it was like, how far back are they going? Like, when does everything kind of come together and make sense? So it was.
I think there's
I don't know where I'm going this.
Yeah. Well, I think that, to comment on something you said there, like I think it was good pacing for a lot of it, where obviously it is like a confusing movie in a lot of ways, and you'll see a scene and be like, okay, I see how that connects, or you almost like you'll be looking forward like, oh, I know how that connects into the next one. But then if there's like a scene where he's traveling somewhere, it's kind of, that would be really difficult. It is always difficult when those happen to like make sure you understand everything still. But I feel like there's a good mix of, usually there's like 3 or 4 color scenes broken up by the little black and white scenes where in like one specific place. So you have like this maybe 20-30 minute segment where he's at Natalie's house, so you can really kind of start to understand what's happening, and then it moves you to the next one so that you can, you know, progress with the story. But I feel like there's a good pacing there where you can kind of follow it, and obviously I've seen the movie enough now that it's just easier for me to follow it that way, even though it is still confusing watching it third or 4th time. But I think that is pretty well done, because if it was just like him moving somewhere else every single shot, that would get really confusing on top of a movie that is already super confusing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Trying to think where else to go. I guess what was I gonna say? Just to do with like his wife and that storyline, and I guess with Sammy. What was that?
Sammy Jenkins.
Yeah, Sammy Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's like, that's like kind of heartbreaking how that all unfolds. But I
Mm.
think it's also super interesting that he's kind of like created this character, or I guess Sammy Jenkins was like a real guy, but not a lot of the facts about him.
Yeah.
He had kind of magnified in his own mind or created. So I think it's interesting how he kind of has dumped a lot of his own personal information, stuff that he doesn't want to accept in this world where like all he can accept are things that he's written down. He's tried so hard to like box this thing away and shove it away
Yeah.
when it's really his reality, and obviously not a reality that you want to happen. But I think also the fact that a lot of that comes out right at the end is really important as well. But I thought that was a really interesting storyline.
Yeah, I think that
tangled in there.
was I think that was honestly like one of my favorite like things about this entire movie. Actually, was that big plot twist with Sammy Jenkins and the realization, or just like the usages of like dumping a lot of that on that other character, so that the viewer we completely like we don't understand the relation between those two characters, other than that they have a similar like condition, right? And I thought that was masterfully done. And when it's all revealed, again, there's a lot of stuff like coming out at the end of the movie, and that's why I feel like I was just strapped in, you know, as this movie was going on. I'm like, holy shit, like this is just going crazy. Like, the further you got into it. So but yeah, that was definitely one of my favorite parts of that whole film, was just the Sammy Jenkins reveal and all that stuff.
One thing that I just realized right now, literally 10 seconds ago, I think one part that's so striking about Nolan's movies, his later stuff, I'm thinking Inception, I'm thinking Dunkirk, the Dark Knight trilogy, and I'm sure this is the case of Interstellar, is how important the music is, right? Like obviously Hans Zimmer works a lot with him, but just like really amplifying these scenes, driving home some of the emotion. But this movie and Following have no, like, is there any music in this whole movie of Memento?
Well, there's
like barely any score.
Nothing
like,
that stood out to me at all.
Yeah, no. I was gonna say there's a couple times I noticed like when he would be realizing something, like kind of near the end, it would just like kind of go to that like I don't know how you would even describe it. It's not really music
subtle.
though. Yeah,
and
exactly.
then, like there's credit music in this movie. I think I clicked out for the credits, but I'm pretty sure there's
definitely like a soundtrack.
Yeah, but like I don't know, used very sparingly, which I think is probably because of maybe the budget, or even just like the amount of connections he has at the time, right? Where this is still like coming off of a kind of a smaller, shorter film that I think maybe won some awards, but didn't have him in the public eye fully. So it's interesting that he it's like I think that's so strong in his later movies, yet it's not something that really is needed for the story as much.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like you think about just like the scale of a movie like Interstellar or like Inception, I feel like you really need that operatic, like heavy hitting Hans Zimmer, you know, soundtrack. It's hard to picture
without it, right?
Score. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But like in a movie like Memento or Following, I feel like what's the best word to describe it? More of like a psychological thing, and like in a weird way that's like a lot more scaled down than these other ones. I don't know. I'm sure you're seeing what I'm trying to say.
I feel like it would also be very, 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 very difficult to score this movie in particular. Following would be a bit easier, but like, damn, with how many times I'm sure this got edited, cut around, like taking out 10 seconds out of a scene to make it flow a bit better. Like, good luck scoring.
You play like a song like in backwards, you know.
Exactly.
I think with this one too, it's almost constant dialogue.
Yeah.
No, for most of the film, and that like there isn't really chance for there to be much of a score.
Yeah, even if there's not like conversations, there's still like your main character. Why am I? Leonard,
he's
like
thinking
just kind
to
of
himself or talking to
thinking.
himself.
You're hearing his thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, there isn't really much room to score it. And I think that's a good thing for this film. I think it is very dialogue driven, and you kind of have that inner monologue in a way. It kind of feels like he's talking to himself when he's over the phone.
Yeah, it's kind of just like this little crazy.
It works as like an inner monologue for us, at least. And so like there's never really a part where it kind of like zooms out and you take a minute to think about things and you have the score going on and you feel X emotions. It's just very dialogue driven. compared to a film that is a lot more show, as like Dunkirk. There's a lot of scenes where it's just showing you what's happening and you kind of interpret it as you will.
Yeah,
And
the
that's
score
where
is so much more important.
The score, yeah, exactly. It's so much more important to drive home certain emotions during said scenes.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the phone, it has to be Teddy that he's talking to, right?
Yeah. That'd be my guess.
Yeah,
it definitely is.
Yeah, so when I was going through like some fun trivia for this, there was something in there that like there's something that shows evidence towards that, and I was like, is that necessary? Like, I feel like it was kind of that's just what I assumed was the case. Because like, who else would it be? It would have to be someone we don't know about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because like Teddy justifies someone putting mail under his door and then calling him and a line. So either
also,
like it would have to be an accomplice of Teddy's, if not him.
Right. Also, when like Teddy gave a description of himself, and then he met him in the lobby, and Leonard obviously agreed that the description matched.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's also
right before they meet for the first time, technically. It's
well, yeah, because he called him, right, and he described himself as a cop, and this is what I look like. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's not any other time that he's speaking to someone on the phone.
My question though is, you see that he must have got the tattoo recently of never answered the phone.
Right.
Like he clearly had that done recently when he
had no hair around it.
He realized because he had the bandage over it when he was talking on the phone with Eddie, so he must have gotten it recently. So my question is like, what drove him to get that tattoo?
That's a good question. Yeah,
because
not really
I would say it's outside of this movie. It's probably, I imagine Teddy got him to do something stupid, like crazy, gaslighted him to do something before, and then his like resetting self where he plays with his own system was to like try and get Teddy out of his life, maybe.
Yeah, Teddy must have. Well, maybe it's just as simple as Teddy at that point was confident that he had enough of a hold on him that he would be able to just kind of convince him to do whatever he needed him to do at that point.
Yeah.
So he didn't want any other outside factors to potentially mess with that. So he just kind of turns him off that scent of like talking to anyone on the phone.
Yeah.
Because that could just complicate things further, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys have other? What else do you got? Any other notes here, or trivia time? There's a lot of trivia for this one.
Let's see. You know, hit me up with a quick trivia. I saw the thing with the chronological thing on like the DVD edition.
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
With like the weird like way to get to it, and then you can't like fast forward or anything.
Kirkland, do you have any other notes, Kirkland, on your end?
No, I do not.
All right, so I'll just read through this. I don't know how this is written, but the limited edition DVD allows the movie to be watched in the exact chronological order of the events of the film. The first couple of scenes of the regular cut of the movie appear normal in this version, meaning they are not reversed. So the very last scene when Teddy gets shot, essentially. However, this version of the movie on disc 2 is quite difficult to reach. The user must answer several questions and solve a puzzle, and forward, reverse, and chapter skip capabilities are disabled. So I want to look into that a bit more and find out what the actual process is. But I think that's kind of interesting because you really don't need that version of the movie, but Nolan put it there for people who are
the hardcores. Yeah.
It's kind of like an escape room or something to figure that
totally.
one out.
Yeah. That's funny.
During Teddy's line, "You don't have a clue, you freak," director Christopher Nolan felt that the actor did not quite nail the end of the line, so he what he decided to do is re-record the last two words to his liking and then delivered them himself. So therefore, in like the final movie, when he says "you freak," that's actually Nolan like imitating his voice.
That's funny.
Edited into the scene, which
awesome.
I didn't notice. So
that's pretty funny. Yeah.
I don't really know. Yeah. I definitely did. I was gonna say I don't really know what Nolan's voice even really sounds like. I haven't watched too many.
I don't think I've ever listened to an interview of his. So
yeah.
Here's one that we talked about in the following episode. Just Following.
Just Following.
Just Following.
That movie took like over a year to film because they filmed 15 minutes every Saturday. This film finished shooting in 25 days. 25.
Damn.
Wow.
What a jump.
Nolan
Going into this film, he's like, okay, fuck that. We're not doing that
this
anymore.
came out only 2 years after that too.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey. Well, yeah. I mean, if it took a whole year to film, it might have taken longer. But I feel like that's not even that shocking actually, because I feel like filming this must have actually been kind of easy. It's just like the editor's floor or like reshoots or something that would be problematic. I wonder if there even was reshoots or if Nolan had just planned it that well, or if they filmed like enough variants of certain scenes that they could like make it work.
It's pretty crazy to like visualize a movie like this for Christopher Nolan to just have that, you know, like in his mind when he's planning this out. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Steven Tobolowsky, it's the guy who plays Sammy, mentioned that to Christopher Nolan that he had experienced amnesia personally a few years earlier. He was given an experimental painkiller that induced amnesia for a surgery he had undergone, and he thinks that this was probably a large reason why he got the role, is because he could sympathize with what that would be like for a character to experience.
Do you think he was like watching TV late night, and then you see those infomercials? It's like, if you've ever taken this blah blah blah, phone this number, and then he was just sitting there and realized it.
Yeah, it's possible.
And
where have we seen that guy before? Because I know I've seen.
Oh, he's been in a couple of things. Again, it's one of those character actors that I just kind of forget what he's in.
I feel like he's like in like a Family Channel show or something. I'm on his IMDb right now. I need to find this out.
Yes, I'm very curious.
He's been in a lot. Holy shit, has he been in a lot? I've scrolled down for like 5 minutes here, and I'm still in 2014. Okay, apparently he was in Batman. Oh, never mind. The video game. He voiced some thugs in a Batman video game. That's kind of fun.
Spaceballs, definitely recognize him.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that movie, but I've seen the memes. So that might be where I recognize him from.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Wow, he's had quite the extensive career. Look at that.
No kidding.
Anyway, I don't know.
Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Okay, so here's some other people who are up for the role of Leonard. I don't know some of these guys, but Aaron Eckhart, Brad Pitt, Charlie Sheen, and Thomas Jane. Not sure Thomas Jane or Aaron Eckhart are, but wow, can you guys picture this movie but with Brad Pitt or Charlie Sheen?
I can picture Charlie Sheen.
I think Brad Pitt could 100% do it.
I think he could, but I feel like I feel like that my whole perspective of this movie would be so different because I don't have much experience with Guy Pearce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Brad Pitt would fit the role really well, actually. Who else was it? Aaron Eckhart.
Yeah, I'm not sure who he is. And then
Charlie Sheen. I can picture Charlie Sheen, honestly.
Oh, Aaron Eckhart.
Because this would have been Charlie Sheen before like the whole Tiger Blood and fun stuff.
I think Aaron Eckhart could also do it. Maybe because they're also both blondes. But
I don't know who that is. I'm gonna look it up quick. Aaron Eckhart.
From The Dark Knight. He's Two-Face.
Oh, okay. Okay, he fits. He has the look of it for sure.
Yeah.
And here's a fun one to go along with that. So for the role of Natalie, also consider it was Ashley Judd, Famke Janssen, and Angelina Jolie. A picture of this movie with Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt instead of who we actually have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Be like the Mr. and Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I feel like I would like this movie a whole lot less if that was the case for some reason, even though I like both of them. But
I'm still curious. I want to peer into that.
Actually, I don't think I want Angelina Jolie in there, but
just Brad Pitt. You're thinking?
Yeah,
I think the two of them would be.
Rock that.
I think Carrie-Anne Moss is fantastic in this movie. We didn't really explicitly say it. I think she's great. She's in Jessica Jones. She's fantastic in that show. But I thought she really just nailed the role in this one.
Yeah, no, she did a great job.
Okay, this one I think is pretty awesome. So, actually, here one more role. This was Christopher Nolan's first choice, Alec Baldwin. What do you think about that?
Alec Baldwin, eh?
Let me search that up here.
I'm trying to picture what he would look like in the 2000s.
Alec Baldwin.
I feel like he'd be a lot smaller. Yeah.
I feel like he grew in size. I feel like he grew in size though in time.
I don't think I want that reality at all. I like Guy Pearson's movie. Great.
Alec Baldwin.
Do you not remember who Alec Baldwin is? Or are you trying to
No,
find
I
what he
do.
looks
I
like?
want to see a picture of him from 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, I could kind of picture him. I don't think it'd be the best choice, but
Because I only picture him as a comedic actor, so it's hard for me to envision that for this movie.
no, I think he's
He
got the look.
doesn't. I don't think so. He doesn't like look rough enough, I guess.
Not
Fair
rough
point.
enough. That's fair.
I think it would have been a different interpretation of the character for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have fit the movie as well. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Memento was considered culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant by the U.S. Library of Congress and was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2017.
Wow.
2017 is when
Holy
that was added.
17
It is
years later.
it is Christopher Nolan's first movie to be preserved in the National Film Registry. It was also the first non-documentary film from the 2000s to be preserved.
Damn.
So that's wild to me.
That is wild.
That's very impressive. Wow.
I honestly didn't even know there was like a national preserve of films in the in the States.
I think it's kind of like it's like a time capsule essentially, you know.
Yeah.
Like shoot that out into space. Like if you could pick one movie, I would not think of Memento to be the movie that I would need to
represent the
include
human race. Yeah.
for cultural, historical, and aesthetic principles. But I think that's pretty awesome.
That's still cool. Yeah.
But the first
I think
non-documentary
it has-
in the 2000s, first non-documentary,
Damn.
all you get for fiction. Crazy?
I think it's
Like
pretty
some-
good. I think it's there's a lot to say about film in that's like encompassed in that film, and I think it has a good take on mental health as well, which I think is important.
Yeah. I also think interesting that it was added in 2017. Like that was a recent addition. Not sure how often they add things, but still, I thought that was kind of interesting. When translating from Latin to English, memento translates to remember, which is kind of cool.
Ooh, ironic.
Ironic, I think not. In one scene, Leonard quickly passes in front of a comic book store. The Batman emblem is displayed prominently in the store's window. I didn't notice that watching the movie, but I think once again, that's pretty cool that his first two movies
I believe it.
Have alluded to the Batman that he would eventually go on to direct.
Now I need to find the Batman thing in The Prestige and Insomnia.
Yeah, I'm gonna be looking
that's
out
the
for
thing.
that.
Find Batman in all his films.
That would be so cool because I've seen Inception 100 times. I don't think there's any Batman in that movie.
Yeah. Did make that after making the.
That's what I
first
mean.
two
Like maybe
ones.
if you just did it for the first four, I think that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, so this one I wrote down here, and I actually went back to watch this in the movie, and it didn't show like this trivia note has. So I don't know what you guys have to say about this, but after his wife's death, Sammy is shown sitting in a mental institution. Briefly, just after someone walks in front of him and before the scene cuts back to Leonard on the phone, Sammy's actually replaced by Leonard sitting in that same chair. Supports the conclusion that the tragic end of Sammy's story is possibly actually Leonard's reality. But when I went back and watched that scene, and I watched it a few times over, I didn't notice that. Like I don't know if it was supposed to be someone in the background rather than the
Were
person
you
in Sammy's
specifically
chair.
looking for it?
Yeah, like I went back to the scene and I watched it like 5 times over to see if I could notice that. Maybe I was watching the wrong one. Maybe because of the time thing, like maybe that's shown twice in the movie.
Right.
Now
But
I'm very curious.
it was
I
around
wrote
140, 130, 140. Can't say exactly when. You can look into it. Turn your sound off.
Yeah.
You can do it. But yeah, I don't know. I looked into it, couldn't find it. If that does happen, that totally changes things, right? And if that is the case, do you guys think that's a possibility that is in fact Leonard's reality, that he ended up in this mental institution, or maybe that was before, like after? I don't know when it would have been timeline wise, right?
Like that's him in the institution, and then like all the events are like not really happening. They're just kind of in his mind. Is that what you're alluding to? Or
Oh
not so
yeah,
much?
it is him. It does change. I just watched it. It's
Really?
That's spooky.
Like 120, like right. What's the timing? Like 129:50.
How is this so difficult, Briggs? Come on.
Yeah, 1 minute 30 seconds and 1 hour 30 minutes and 2 seconds.
Okay.
It is
So
Leonard.
it's Leonard in the chair. Wow. So that changes everything, possibly. What does that mean? Because the way I would take it is that would have happened after his wife was killed by the insulin shot,
Yeah.
but before the events
Yeah.
of the movie, right?
Yeah, because it's him telling the story. So I imagine he was in there, and then maybe Teddy, having found his, like, come across his police case,
Yeah.
decide he's like, oh, I can maybe take advantage of the situation, and then because I don't think Leonard would have been forced into that.
Yeah, do you think Leonard, like, if Leonard
situation.
was there, could he have just left, or would that be
Probably.
something where he was? Yeah, I wonder if he could just leave straight up, or if he had to implement his system to try and like build trust with the people and then leave.
Yeah, could be.
Huh.
But yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Damn.
1
Can you
minute,
send
1
it?
hour.
Can you send a screenshot or something? Take a quick screen cap.
Yeah,
Send me
sure.
that. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking at the wrong moment. But anyway, that's pretty wild. That's a cool.
That
fun
is
fact.
wild.
Shouts to trivia.
It's a quick shot. But yeah.
And hopefully you guys don't have this page up in front of you where I got this from, but I'm gonna ask for your opinion here. So, or not opinion, but your guess. How many times does the movie jump back and forth between different, like, not timelines, but how many jumps is there?
Oh God.
40.
Yes.
40 is my
40 for Briggs.
I will say
that. I don't know why I say that, but
I will say 29.
29.
Yeah.
You guys ready to have your mind blown?
Yeah.
113
Holy
times.
freaking chicken.
Wow.
That is a
And
lot.
I didn't count this myself. I didn't go back and fact check this one, but
I would believe
that's
it.
a lot.
I think
I don't know
yeah,
if
that's
because there's a
definitely
couple
very high.
flashbacks. I don't know if those are included in that. I'd say they should be, but
It's got an asterisk next to it.
at least over 100, even if you take the flashbacks
That's
out.
that's crazy.
Which doesn't seem true to me. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, last one here for you. Oh, this one actually, oh man, that could have been the last fun fact. I already said this one earlier, but when Leonard writes down "Do not trust her," he writes it in cursive writing instead of like his block letters. But boom, there you go. Some fun trivia for this wild ride of a movie. Kirkland Patzer, are you gonna rate this movie? You have to at this point. You did it for following. You gotta do it now.
Yeah, I've always done it, so I might as well. Yeah, so this movie, I think it will get better for me the more and more I watch it, because like there's things we were talking about in this review that I didn't even realize that were in the film. You know, like the big Sammy Leonard switch. Like I don't know how the average like viewer, like how many times they would have to watch this film to like figure that out, because it sounds like it's very quick snippet, eh? Like
it is a quick snippet.
Like how many seconds is it on screen?
So
less than a second.
I have it paused at 1:30:02, and it's already off screen before 1:30:02 ends.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm sure there's other like just hidden things that we've yet to discover,
and it's not even on the screen at the start of 1:30:02.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fraction of a second.
Man,
that's insane.
That is insane. But yeah, so I am gonna rate this one an 8 out of 10. Probably fairly low if you just think of like the originality of what this film is and the way that it's tackled and like the fun camera tricks. But I just have issues with some of the things, and a lot of them might not make sense to the average person, but it's my personal rating, so that's just what I'm gonna give it.
Hey man, it's your rating. You do what you want.
That's right, man.
Briggs. No one can see what you're holding up, but I can recite it to them. It's an 8. Is it any sort of 8? Is it a faltering 8? Is it a triumphant 8? What kind of 8 is it? Just an 8?
It's a looping 8.
Looping. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, some sort of time loop. Like 8.
Right.
It's a loop. Yeah.
I mean, there's not really a time loop in this movie. It's more just like a...
Yeah. Oh, Dylan, enable screen sharing, because screen shotting is hard and weird.
I don't know how to do that on this service, so we'll do it after. I trust you.
Okay, I'll leave it open. We can just do it on Discord or something.
We'll do it after, yeah.
Easy.
What was I going to say? I think that's all there is to say. No, this was fun. I'm glad that we finally got to talk about this movie, because this one's always been like, I don't know, kind of like distantly in my memory. It's a movie I like, but I don't like frequent rewatches of.
Yeah,
it's funny actually. I remember being in your basement, literally like the OG Geekverse, like the start of it, and I remember it might have been you, But I remember specifically Jessica and another person, it was probably you, but they were recommending this movie to me, and I'd never heard of it. I didn't know it was about Christopher Nolan, so it's funny we're finally here, years later, actually doing a retro on it on the podcast. It's kind of funny.
We made it.
Yeah, time skip. Maybe this happened at the start of my movie that someone's watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really glad to have rewatched it again now. I've seen it a few times at this point, and if you're listening to the audio at this point now, the tracks have merged together. I've actually re-edited this whole thing to be out of order. So good luck to the viewer. Hopefully, no, I'm just kidding. That would be quite the achievement. I would put like all of our audio differently synced.
Christopher Nolan would hire you for his next film.
Yeah, he doesn't need me. He's busy making Tenet, but. Yeah, no, thanks for joining me, guys. This was a fun couple first episodes. Next time we'll be doing Insomnia, which is a movie that I have not seen. I don't think either of you have seen. So we're all going to be going in fresh on that one, and it's going to be fun. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Check out our Patreon. That's the main place to support us if you want to support us, of course.
Yeah.
You can recommend games and or movies on there with a donation, and then we will, if you want to hear us talk about stuff, just go in there, do it, done. It's that easy. You can also get stuff early. Like I'm sure a lot of these Nolan Retro episodes are going to be up there early. As soon as we record them, we pretty much put them up there. So you get stuff as soon as we're doing them, which is fun. And yeah, check out the social medias. You know how to find us. Geek First Podcast, Geek First Cast. Just search them in there. Check out our other network that we have going on right now. Not the other network, but the other feed with other casts on the Geek Ultimate Alliance. That's a fun place as well. That at this point in time, by the time this is on the live feeds, it'll have been pumping for a couple weeks there. So that's pretty much all I have to say for today. Thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks for everyone for listening, and we will see you for Insomnia later.
This has been just Memento.
Hey.
We'll catch you on the flip.
Ciao.